integer, type, variable, method, object, class, conditional, boolean. What does it mean?
Hey, calm down. It's simple.
Hey everyone, the world of coding can be an elusive and intimidating world to get into if you're looking to learn. If you're somebody with math anxiety but want to make a game, you are going to have a horrible time trying to understand everything there is to coding. It can be overwhelming even without that anxiety. My goal in this video is to try and make understanding coding easier. We're not going to be coding in this video as much as I'm going to try and make things like integers, strings, variables, loops, methods, and etc. as easy and intuitive to understand as possible. This video will be perfect for you if you're just beginning your coding journey but are struggling to wrap your head around everything. Let's get started with the very basics: variables, objects, and types. For a variable, think of algebra and math. In algebra, you have equations like Pythagoras' theorem, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. The a, b, and c in this equation are variables. Unlike mathematical algebra, however, you can assign basically any object to a variable, not just numbers. And a variable name can be whatever you would like it to be. To relate this to day-to-day life, I'll use myself as an example. My name is Matthias and I'm a person. To think of this like code, I could say the variable Matthias is equal to a person object. My name is attached to that person object, and to refer to that is to refer to my person. All of our parents assigned our variable names when we were born. Now, we have talked a lot about objects that you can assign to a variable. What is an object? An object in coding is basically everything. A number is an object, a class is an object, null is an object. It's not too hard to apply this to life and see how everything is an object. However, you don't treat all objects the same. You click a mouse, you type on a keyboard. It is the same with coding. This is where we get into types. A type in coding defines what operations are allowed to be performed on the given object. For example, you can't divide a string by an integer because that's not how integers and strings were programmed themselves to behave. Common pre-built types are lists, strings, characters, integers, doubles, floats, and booleans. Let's go over what those are. Strings are just text contained within quotes. A character is a single letter. Integers are any whole number. Floats are numbers with a decimal point. Doubles are the same as floats but can represent larger numbers. Boolean is just a very fun word for something being true or false. A list is a list of objects, usually contained in square brackets. Now that we've gone over all that, it seems like a good time to get into operators and operands. Operands are the objects you're performing the operator on. Operators are operations like addition and subtraction that can be performed on objects, and it doesn't only apply to numbers. For example, you can add two strings together, subtract strings, and even multiply strings. There's also a lot of other operators special to coding. Now that we are beginning to understand things, let's get into conditionals and loops. Conditionals are operations used in coding to make decisions, commonly written with if and else. Here's some example code. We can read this code as, if x is equal or the same as y, return x, otherwise return y. You can also add additional else-if statements, which can allow you to make more decisions on your variable. If we wanted to apply if-else statements to real life, we can think about your average day. If woke up is equal to true, get out of bed. Else if woken up is equal to true, get grumpy. Else, stay asleep. We code all day, every day without really thinking about it. You probably go through thousands of your own if-else statements a day. Now that we understand conditionals better, let's get into loops. In coding, there are a couple different loops. Most commonly, there are for and while loops. Usually, conditionals are contained within your loops to make a decision on something you're looping through or to break the loop itself. For loops are the most common of the loops you will find yourself writing. Here's an example. We can read this as for every x in the y, we print x. X would be the current object we are looping through in y. Y could be a range of numbers, a string, or a list. For a range of numbers between 1 and 10, x would be equal to 1 to 9. If it was the string hello, it would print each separate character H, E, L, L, and O. And for a list, it would print every object in the list. If our list was 1, high, and 3, x would return 1, high, and then 3. Now, for while loops. A while loop will keep going as long as it is true. Here's an example. We can read this as while x is less than y, add 1 to x. If we start x at 0 and y at 5, the while loop will end once x hits 5. We use for and while loops a ton in our own day-to-day lives. For example, for every dirty dish, clean dish, while living, breathe. Now with all that out of the way, we can get into the fun stuff. Let's start with functions. Functions in coding are chunks of code in your program you would like to repeat. For example, we create a function called checkxy, and if x is equal to y, we return true. Otherwise, we return false. If we wrote checkxy in our code, it would run the code contained within the checkxy function. To apply this to real life, let's go back to the for every dirty dish, clean dish loop. We can apply this to the clean dish part of that real life pseudocode. It is a function that contains all the actions of cleaning a dish we are calling on for every dirty dish we need to clean. Now, after talking about all this, I think it's important to get into something that not a lot of people talk about: syntax. This is the bane of your existence as a beginner programmer. Any coder you can think of has seen this error a few hundred times, and at the start it can be hard to understand what is even wrong. Syntax, simply put, is how your code is supposed to be written. Think of it as computer grammar. English has syntax. Matthias's guy me is obviously not the best way to communicate I'm Matthias, a guy. And coding specifically really cares about the white space and how you write your code. In JavaScript, you are one missing semicolon away from disaster because you have to end every line of code with one to show the language that it's the end of the line, move to the next one. If it can't see that, you will get a syntax error. Usually though, it's because something is wrong in your white space, like a line of code has fallen out of a function. For example, if you write a function like this, it will cause a syntax error. The correct way to write it would be like this. Maintaining proper indentation and keeping your brackets aligned is key to being a successful programmer. And now, congratulations! You now have a basic understanding of the base fundamentals of programming. From here, you can get started on watching tutorials and growing your knowledge. However, there's a looming threat coming. A final boss. One acronym. 3 letters. Hours of learning. OOP. Object-Oriented Programming. OOP is crucial to fully blossoming as a programmer and perhaps the hardest thing to fully grasp when you are learning. OOP is all about classes and methods and using them and everything mentioned previously, of course, to code more effectively and efficiently. I'll start off with explaining classes. Classes are technically objects, though they are a special kind of object as a class defines an object. All the objects we mentioned before, like strings and integers, are technically contained within a class as well. Here's a visualization. If we had a class in our code named myClass called className, its type would be myClass and its object would be className. For int x, its type would be int and its object would be x. Int is just a class that contains the attributes and behaviors for an integer. As you can maybe begin to see, this is where programming can get really fun. This is where we can start writing our own objects that share attributes and behaviors. A classic real-life example of this is the farm. Imagine we're coding a sheep pen with 100 unique sheep in it. We aren't going to want to write separate code for each unique sheep in our pen, so this is where classes and OOP come in handy. Let's imagine we create a class called animal, and it has variables in it that are set when we create a new animal. Let's say its age and name, since those can be universal animal qualities. Now, we can create a sheep class and set one of its variables to create a new animal and have its own unique attribute of how much wool it has. Now, we can create 100 sheep animals that each have their own unique age and name and amount of wool and access each one's attributes separately. We could even add a new dog class that creates a new animal but contains a unique attribute that's how far they can smell. From here, we can get into methods. Methods are just unique behaviors to an object or class. For example, strings have a method called split that allows you to split the string into 2 at a specific point in the string. Let's continue our real-life example to get a grasp of this. We have our animal class, sheep class, and dog class. Let's give them each a unique behavior. Each animal will get older, so we can add a new function to the animal class called getOlder that will add 1 to the age. For our sheep, we can add a graze function that has them search for food and fill their tummies. And for our dog, we can add a herding function that keeps all our sheep at bay. Now, we could call the getOlder method on our dog and sheep, and they will get older, or we can use the graze function on our sheep or the herd function on our dog. Now, truly, from here, I think you are capable of learning any coding language. Don't be afraid to ask questions and search for answers. Every coder's best friend is Stack Overflow, even people working in big tech companies. Please let me know in the comments if this video helped at all and what you managed to program yourself with your newfound understanding of coding. As long as one person learned something, my goal has been accomplished. If enough people would be interested, I could also make a coding tutorial as well. Let me know down below. I hope everyone has a great day. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.